So it looks like we already know what the DLC maps for Black Ops 7 Zombies are going to be. And let me tell you, the locations sound a hell of a lot more exciting than what we got in Black Ops 6 Zombies. This information is coming from leaks by Insider Gaming, which were given to us all the way back in March. And this isn't new, we knew what all of the BO6 DLC maps would be from the very beginning of that game. And well, we have these leaks for BO7, which back in March I thought, okay, these may or may not be true, there's no way of knowing. However, now that we've had the official intro cutscene and we know more about the map, it seems to corroborate them. So the leak that I'm talking about is this one up on screen now. The article told us, remember, this was before we even knew the name of the game, Call of Duty 2025 Zombies could have 6 fully fledged round-based zombies maps throughout the game's lifecycle. Details of what COD 2025 is shaping up to be is already an open secret, including that the game is a Black Ops 2 sequel and that the original Zombies crew is likely making a return. I mean, that's been confirmed now, which is more evidence that this leak is more than likely true. In the map's early development, it is understood that the plan for Zombies was to build the maps from the ground up to allow them to be played in different game modes, including traditional round-based, grief, and outbreak. It's understood that Treyarch was playing around with more out there settings this time around, including a map set in post-World War II New York where the Nazis had dropped a nuclear bomb, with another map being described as being set in a Japanese temple at the foot of an erupting volcano. Other ideas included a map set in Vietnam, one in Afghanistan, and another out there idea of one being set in a space station in the dark ether. So regarding the game's maps, this article mentions Treyarch playing around with different ideas for settings, which on one hand makes it seem like these maps are not set in stone, these are not definite, they're just ideas, but on the other hand, when we combine this with what we know about the storyline and the characters, it gets interesting, because Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey all come from these realities and locations that are being mentioned as DLC maps. So we take the official description for Richtofen, for example. We are told this version of Richtofen is a brilliant but unhinged scientist and a hero of the Reich, where he finds himself torn from 1945 in a world where the Axis powers triumphed over the Allied nations. Shaped by ambition and corruption, he masks his innate sadism and considerable ego behind quick wit and a charming smile. He vows that reality itself will ultimately bow to his design. So this version of Richtofen comes from a reality where the Nazis won World War II, and we have this information leak telling us one of the maps Treyarch are playing around with is to be set in a post-World War II New York where the Nazis had dropped a nuclear bomb, which fits perfectly alongside the description of Richtofen's timeline, where the Nazis won the war. If there's a map where they dropped a nuclear bomb on New York, it would make sense that in this map, the Nazis won. So you can kind of get where I'm going with this. It seems like Treyarch are playing around with the idea of us going to the locations where each of these characters, Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey, are from. So one DLC map seems like it will be taking place in a post-World War II New York where the Nazis dropped a nuclear bomb. The reality from where this incarnation of Richtofen is from. Whether that would be DLC 1, 2, 3 or 4, I don't know. But we then look at the official description for Nikolai. We were told he is a Soviet tank commander that arrived in the Dark Ether from the brutal mountainous landscape of 1984 Afghanistan, where duty, delusionment and misfortune collide. Scarred by war and haunted by both betrayal and his own decisions, he masks his bitterness with dark humour, yet remains a steadfast warrior when the shells begin to fall. So this version of Nikolai comes from 1984 Afghanistan, and we go back to the elite descriptions of DLC maps. One of the other ideas Treyarch were playing around with was a map being set in Afghanistan, the exact location where this Nikolai comes from. The official description of Takeo told us he is a disgraced Ronin who wandered 1591 feudal Japan without master or honour, carrying the weight of his exile as a yoke he cannot cast off. Bound by code he only still barely believes in, he seeks redemption in the chaos of battle, his blade both a burden he must bear and judgment on his enemies. So this Takeo comes from 1591 feudal Japan, and the leak told us one of the DLC maps Treyarch had in mind is set in a Japanese temple at the foot of an erupting volcano. Again, the exact location where this Takeo comes from. And then finally, the official description for Dempsey. This incarnation of him is a battle-hardened US Marine who most recently fought through the jungles of 1968 Vietnam with grit, sarcasm, and a relentless will to survive. In this fractured reality, his distrust of his new companions and the unfamiliar surroundings have turned this otherwise dependable soldier into the unpredictable wild card of the group. So we have this Dempsey torn from 1968 Vietnam, and we were once again told back in March, Treyarch were playing around with the idea of a map being set in Vietnam. So you can see it seems like, and this is not confirmed, all of the DLC maps that we end up going to in Black Ops 7 could be the realities from which Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey have been torn from. Richtofen in a post-World War II New York where the Nazis won the war by dropping a nuclear bomb, Takeo from a Japanese temple below an erupting volcano, Nikolai from Afghanistan, and Dempsey from Vietnam. Why we would be going to their realities, their locations, there could be plenty of reasons. Storyline wise, we've just seen in the Ashes of the Damned intro cutscene this shadowy figure steal their souls, so perhaps we are going to these locations, going to their realities in order to somehow retrieve their souls or do something to make sure that this shadowy figure can't do anything with them. There could be plenty of reasons. There's no point guessing right now. Maybe they have to travel back to their last location before they enter the Dark Aether to save themselves. I don't know, but this, along with, well, everything else in this leak having turned out to be true, Transit is the map, these characters have returned, this leak was right all this time. There is no reason now not to believe that the DLC maps aren't correct either. I will say, it is still early, and this leak doesn't say Treyarch were definitely going with this idea, but this leak was from back in March. Treyarch know years in advance what they are going to do. Black Ops 6 was planned a long time ago, believe it or not. Both BO6 and BO7 have been in development ever since Cold War. The two games were developed alongside each other, so best believe Treyarch have known exactly what the DLC maps for Black Ops 7 are going to be a long time ago. And if this is the leak we got, I would be inclined to believe this now. There's not really any reason not to. There is one thing that stands out though. It mentions a map that doesn't align with the locations of our characters, and that is the one that is supposedly set in a space station in the Dark Aether. Out of all that I've read, it sounds the most exciting, but that location doesn't link to any of our characters. Funnily enough, if you go to the top of this leak, it says COD 2025 Zombies could have 6 full-fledged round-based zombies maps. Well, on day 1 on disc, there's only one, that's Transit, and if we get the 4 usual DLC maps, that would take us to 5, which means the 6th map is either unknown or untrue. If we do end up getting a DLC 5, I know at this point it's kind of a meme because we say it every year, will there be a DLC 5? It never turns out to be true, but yeah, the supposed DLC map that is set in a space station in the Dark Aether sounds amazing. There are just so many ideas that come into my head when I think about that. I think of like horror games such as Dead Space. Imagine a zombies map in a location like that, on an abandoned space station. The amount of horror you could include into that would be amazing, but it doesn't fit with the locations of our characters, so to me it would make more sense if it was the finale, the final map. So yeah, to be honest, we'll probably know what all the DLC maps definitely are by the time Black Ops 7 comes out. In November, people are going to go into the game files and extract information, just as they did for BO6, and find the files for the DLC maps, which will give us the code name and an idea of where we are going. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if Treyarch ended up including those strings in BO6. But yeah, it looks like these are the 4 DLC maps we are going to have. We are travelling to the locations where Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey were ripped from, their realities. And potentially there will be a map which is set in a space station within the Dark Aether. So there we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think these maps sound cool? With this game being set in the Dark Aether, Treyarch have a real opportunity to make some really cool maps now. They can literally do anything. It doesn't have to be based in reality like Black Ops 6 was. So with the Vietnam map, for example, and the Afghanistan map, if we go to those locations normally, it sounds pretty boring, but if we go to those locations set in the Dark Aether, it could be interesting. Vietnam and Afghanistan do sound pretty boring as a zombies map, but it all just depends on what Treyarch do with it. One set at the foot of an erupting volcano though, and a post-World War II New York where a nuclear bomb was dropped, now they do sound good. But yeah, drop a like rating if you've enjoyed, make sure you are subscribed to the channel to stay up to date with the latest videos, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.